Hey, what's going on guys? It's Tom Mason here, back with another video, and today we're talking about the awesomeness that is the Nikon 300mm 2.8 VR2. Hi guys, if you're new to the channel, my name is Tom Mason. I'm a professional wildlife and nature photographer, and on this channel I take you behind the scenes of how I shoot out on location making images of wildlife. Hopefully you'll pick up a few tips for your own shooting and some ideas about gear and kit and everything like that as well. For those of you who have been watching for a while and have been part of the channel as it's been growing over the last couple of years, I know there are a load of you right down there, who watch the channel but aren't subscribed, and it would really help me out if you could just go down there, press that little button and subscribe to the channel. It just helps me out and a little favour to me. But enough of the plugs, let's get back to the lens and the Nikon 300mm 2.8. Now, I've had this lens in my kit bag for 8 years now. It was one of the first things I purchased when I turned professional as a wildlife photographer. It's come with me on loads of assignments around the world. It's been to the rainforest a couple of times, it's been to Africa, it's been to the Falkland Isles to photograph penguins, and I probably shot hundreds of thousands of images with the lens, and I thought it was about time I gave it a review. So let's talk about the lens.
The Nikon 300mm 2.8 VR2 is a super telephoto lens equipped for the toughest jobs. The lens is professionally built and fully weather sealed, packed with technologies. VR is accessed with an easy central ring, and switches on the lens's barrel control the major functions. The Superfast Afs Motor, assisted by the wide aperture, offers blazing fast focus speeds with a close focus of 2.2 meters that's great for smaller subjects whilst also being fully teleconverter compatible. Focus memory enables you to return to a precise focus with a press of a button that's brilliant for hide work in the field. Comfortable and ergonomic, the lens fits well in the hand for handheld shooting, whilst the thumb and forefinger position are perfect for switching the VR on and off, as well as using manual focus override if needed.
So as you can tell, the 300mm 2.8 is a fully fledged professional bit of gear with all the bells and whistles. But why did I actually go for the 300mm 2.8 rather than some of the other longer super telephoto lenses? And largely it just came down to personal preference and style. For me, I really like the 300mm focal length. I think it looks really good, it looks very natural, and when I'm making images in the wild, that's what I want them to feel like. Sometimes those super telephoto ones, they give a kind of very similar appearance every single time, and I just really tended towards the images that I saw from the 300mm focal length when I was out shooting. So of course that led me to the purchase. Additionally, there are some factors of the 300mm that makes it kind of more useful for the way that I shoot. Firstly, that wide open aperture makes for just absolutely beautiful backgrounds. When you're producing portraits, it just renders bokeh in such a wonderful way. And of course, being a wide open aperture, it also means that I can work in low light conditions, when the sun's dropping low or in those early morning times. I get probably an extra 20 minutes or so on an f4 lens that's really handy for making the most of any wildlife encounters. Additionally, the 300mm 2.8 is significantly smaller than some of the other super telephotos. I can easily handhold it for long periods of time. That's super useful if you're tracking birds in flight, if you're working and stalking with subjects like I was with hares in a recent video. It just is very flexible in the way it works. And of course, if I do need some extra focal length, I can add a 1.4 teleconverter, even a 2x teleconverter, to give me the equivalence of a 420mm f4 or a 600mm 5.6. That is far more than enough focal length than I ever need, especially when using something like the D850 with that high resolution sensor. And the fact that it's so small and compact, it fits in even a small size backpack, that makes it super easy to travel with. And as someone who goes to multiple locations around the world, that is a real benefit to me, and something that's certainly worth considering when you're investing in a super telephoto. So when it comes to picking a lens for wildlife photography, one of the most important factors is the fact that it is resistant to the weather. I've been using this lens now in multiple locations around the world for years, and it's never skipped a beat. From the beaches of the Falkland Isles, where I got absolutely battered with sand, to beaches in the UK where I get absolutely battered with sand, to the rainforest where the humidity was super high, all the way out to the Africa and Botswana where the heat was really, really strong. No problems whatsoever. Having absolutely soaked it on so many occasions, I've never had a single issue with the weatherproofing on the 300mm 2.8. It just keeps going, keeps focusing, And to be honest, if anything, it's getting better and better with every iteration of new camera that I get. The autofocus motor in here is just so fast, and with the new cameras, with that upgraded autofocus that you've got in these newer camera bodies, it really is locking onto subjects, tracking, and just nailing it more than it ever has before. And it really does put a smile on your face when something that you invested a lot of money in just keeps getting better and better. Of course, one of the major reasons that you buy a Super Telephoto is for that optical quality, and the 300mm just does not disappoint. I think the images that come out of this really do pop in a certain way. The just look of them is just phenomenal, and I love them. I can tell immediately when I'm scrolling through my Lightroom catalogue which ones were shot on the 300mm and which ones weren't. The way that the background falls off into lovely bokeh, that's very smooth in its appearance and then kind of drifts into absolute sharpness on your subject, is just wonderful. I think it makes portraits of wildlife look great, but also those contextual images as well. It really does help isolate your subject in a landscape for a really interesting style of frame. Something that just those consumer zooms just cannot imitate in any way. You really do have to step up to a Super Telephoto if you want that certain look and performance. And of course, the other thing is that when you want to make images for clients, you really do want to have the absolute best lenses to give you that critical sharpness and also to make the best of those new and modern cameras. And every time that I use the 300mm, it just reminds me of why I spent the money, because the images that come out of it are just cracking. So when it comes to buying a Super Telephoto, it's really important to take your time, because of course it's an incredibly large investment and one that you're probably not going to get to make twice. For me, I spent a long time looking through my image catalogue and the sort of images I was making and the focal lengths I like to use, and found that I was working at most of the time, as well as looking at other photographers and work that I loved and seeing what lenses they used. And what I found is that I was always looking at the 300mm focal length and that 300mm 2.8 for certain types of shots, and that's what led me to purchase my lens. Of course, if you're someone who loves to work with tiny little birds and constantly finds that they need that extra reach, a 500 or a 600 might be a better investment. But for me, as someone who travels and does a variety of different shooting, the 300mm really fits my needs. And I think that for lots of people, it could be a great choice. The 300mm 2.8, when I bought it, was about £4,000. It's a good 8 years ago now. But right now, they can actually be found secondhand. The VR1 and the VR2 that are both outstanding optics for anywhere from £1,800 to £2,600 for a mint condition model. And that is just absolutely incredible value. And I think for many people investing in their photography, they might be looking at some of those Super Telephoto zooms at the consumer level that have those, you know, the apertures that aren't as fast, the autofocus that isn't as fast, and largely the optics that just aren't as good. And with a little bit more saving and a little bit of extra investment, they could pick up one of these at a fantastic price. And I think it would suit them for many, many years to come, and would be a far better investment long term. Oh, right. So the Nikon 300mm 2.8 is certainly one of my all-time favorite lenses. It's absolutely fantastic for wildlife photography, and I'm sure that anyone who gets out there and makes images of nature will absolutely fall in love with this lens. It's extremely flexible in the way that you can approach wildlife photography with this lens. You know, that wide open aperture makes it great for working in early mornings, late evenings, being able to pair it with teleconverters for a range of focal lengths and, you know, getting closer to subjects when you can't, you know, actually get closer. But also the fact that it means that you can have those beautiful backgrounds with those isolated subjects using that 2.8 aperture is just gorgeous. The image quality is wonderful, even on the latest and greatest DSLRs and mirrorless cameras. And the lightweight nature of the lens makes it really, you know, useful when you're traveling. It doesn't really get in the way, and I can use it handheld whether I'm stalking or whatever. It's just perfect, really, in almost any situation. And it's certainly the best investment I've ever made in my photography. And I'm sure that as a wildlife photographer, if you make the investment in a super telephoto, you know, you save up and you spend what is a significant chunk of money on a lens like this, it really will have its benefits and help you take your photography just up to that next level. This for me is certainly something that allowed me to pursue becoming a professional photographer, you know, more consistently, and it's just enabled me to make great images all over the place. That is fantastic, and it's why it's a very good friend of mine. You know, the only lens that I can see replacing this anytime soon is the Nikon 120 to 300mm 2.8 that just came out, but at £9,500, it's a pretty hefty sum, and it's certainly gonna have to really knock the socks off the 300mm 2.8 for me to really pick one of those up. And of course, for many people, it's just probably not going to be an option. Whereas being able to buy one of these for about £2,500 now is an absolute steal. So I'll drop some links below, you know, if I find some good ones that you guys can check out, because I really think for a lot of people, this would just be a fantastic lens for wildlife photography that would far surpass any of those prosumer zooms. But you know, that's it for today, guys. I hope you've enjoyed that quick kind of roundup and look at the 300mm 2.8. If you've got any questions, be sure to drop them in the comments below. Subscribe if you're not subscribed already. And until the next one, guys, get out there, enjoy nature, and make some great wildlife photography. Right, I'm going to crack on and see what I can find.